So Samsung flew me out to New York City for Galaxy Unpacked, and I've been daily driving the brand new Galaxy Z Fold 7 for a week, shooting with it, editing with it, and after putting it through daily use here in New York City, I've got some thoughts. So in this video, I'll break down what it's been like using the Fold 7 every single day, the feel, the camera, battery life, and whether I'd actually switch to it full time. Let's get right into it. So the day before Unpacked, Samsung gave creators early access to the new lineup, which included the Fold 7, Flip 7, and the latest lineup of Galaxy watches. And I was honestly so excited. This was my first time actually spending real time with the foldable, and I had no idea what to expect. Before they even handed us the phones, we actually sat down for a little private briefing. Then we got to the content capture floor. They decked it out like a mini film studio. It had like multiple stage sets like a home office, lifestyle scenes, and each one lit perfectly with softboxes. And I remember walking over to one of the desks, picking up the Fold 7 for the first time, and man, I was impressed. The Fold 7 is ridiculously thin. Like when it's folded, it honestly felt slimmer than my S25 Ultra. And when you unfold it, that's when it really clicks. It feels light, like almost fragile light. I kept turning it over in my hand thinking, is this actually like a foldable? Because when unfolded, the Fold 7 is actually thinner than the S25 Edge. And if you've ever held that phone, you know how insanely slim that already is. And weight-wise, it's now 216 grams down from 239 grams on the Fold 6. You feel that drop immediately. It's very pocketable, less top-heavy. However, it does feel a bit slippery though. You get like super smooth edges and a slick back. So if you're the type to drop your phone, you're definitely gonna have to have like a case on this. The hinge got a major upgrade too. They're calling it like this armor flex hinge. And it's not just stronger, it makes the crease less noticeable. And that's huge for me because the crease is actually the main reason I've never switched to a foldable in the first place. But this one, unless you're viewing from the side, you barely notice it. And more importantly, you don't feel it when you're swiping across the screen. Also, let's talk about the colors real quick. I tested out jet black, silver shadow, blue shadow, and mint. At first I was like all in on jet black. It's classic and clean. But once I saw blue shadow, it was game over. It's super contrasty, pops in natural light, and yeah, I'm pretty biased as well because blue is my favorite color. Mint's a nice surprise too. It's a little bit more teal in person. It's an online exclusive, so you won't see it everywhere. What really surprised me though was how usable this phone is closed. The new front cover screen is now 6.5 inches with the normal aspect ratio, so you can actually use it like a regular phone. I found myself replying to texts, scrolling, even taking quick photos, all without opening the fold. That was one criticism I had with foldables in the past, was just how unusable and thin the cover screen was, but they did a fantastic job making it slightly wider. Because let's be honest, you're not going to use this unfolded all the time. Most of the time, you're going to be in this folded mode. The inner display looks beautiful. It's big, vibrant, perfect for YouTube, Netflix. But unlike the S25 Ultra, there's no anti-reflective coating here. So in bright daylight, especially when shooting content, it can be a little tough to see. And yes, you do get black bars on the top and bottom when watching videos, but I don't know about you guys, I usually watch YouTube in this way where I can see the video and look at comments, so that doesn't really bother me. Even when watching Netflix, the black bars are not that bad. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still gonna get a bigger screen, which makes watching shows and movies feel more immersive. Now that massive 8-inch screen is clutch, especially when traveling. Using it on the plane is great too since it's so light. I can carry it with just like one hand and don't feel any fatigue before having to switch over to the other hand, of course. So yeah, first impressions, this is hands down the biggest design leap Samsung's ever made in a foldable. So after Unpacked, I really wanted to put the Fold 7 to the test with actual real world shooting. And honestly, there's no better place than New York City for that. First, let's start with the main sensor. It's the same 200 megapixel camera from the S25 Ultra. That thing is no joke. But here's the catch, it defaults to 12 megapixels unless you manually switch it. So most of the time I shoot at 50 megapixels or 200 megapixels for max quality. If you're someone who edits photos like me, you definitely want to spring for the higher storage options because those RAW files add up fast. And speaking of RAW files, I also shoot all of my images in RAW so I can edit them in Adobe Lightroom. In fact, I edited most of my shots in Lightroom right on the phone. The images are sharp, but sometimes a little too sharp. So what I like to do is I usually dial down the sharpness a bit and the results actually look great. Dynamic range held up pretty well, especially during golden hour. Now Samsung took us to the Yankees game on our last day, and that's when I tested out the zoom capabilities. The photos came out surprisingly clean, but just know you're working with a 10 megapixel telephoto and a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and both are okay in quality. Not bad, just not on par with the S25 Ultra. Now I get it, Samsung's probably had to keep the secondary sensors unchanged to hit this thin design. Still, if If you care about ultra wide or telephoto quality, it's something to keep in mind. Now for selfies, this is actually fun. You can flip open the phone, use the rear cameras, and preview the shot using the front cover screen. Kind of wild shooting high quality selfies like that, and it definitely beats most front cameras. You can even shoot log video in that mode, which is insane. Having pretty much a monitor plus high quality camera setup all the time. For videos I shot pretty much all in log, it's actually super creator friendly. You can color correct directly on the phone, save a copy, and upload directly to Instagram stories, for example. But if you want a little bit more flexibility, you can import that log footage to your video editor of your choice and import your own LUT, and you're good. I highly recommend shooting in log to get the very best looking videos since it captures way more dynamic range. Stabilization is not too bad either. I mean, this phone is extremely light, which might result in more shaky movement since you can get a lot of these micro movements. But surprisingly, the Fold 7 holds up, and that wasn't an issue for me. Alright, so overall, the main sensor is fantastic. Ultra wide and zoom, a little bit underwhelming, especially if you're coming from the Ultra. But for daily use, editing on the go, it's pretty solid. Alright, outside of the camera, what really surprised me about using the Fold 7 all week was just how normal it felt. It was like I was using my normal phone, but instead I get this amazing 8-inch screen whenever I needed it. Whether I was editing photos, replying to emails, pulling up maps in the city, or just watching videos on the hotel bed, all felt seamless. Now performance wise, it's rocking the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 Elite chip paired with 12GB of RAM or 16GB if you go all out with the 1TB version. It handles everything I threw at it. No crashes and no weird lag, it all ran pretty smooth. That said, it does run warm, especially when you're gaming or charging. Not like crazy hot, but warm enough to notice if you're holding it for long stretches. It's definitely something to be aware of if you're coming from an iPhone or a cooler running device. Alright, so when it comes to battery life, it's still a 4400 mAh battery, basically the same as the Fold 6. No fancy silicon carbon battery here, but it holds up. Now, even with heavy use, shooting, editing, and screen brightness set to high, I was ending the day with like 30 to 40% left. In fact, on my flight coming home from NYC to LA, I was watching Netflix the entire time and still ended with like 20%. If you're more casual, this could stretch to a day and a half easily. I mean, one time I didn't even charge it, and the next day I woke up with like 50%. This is not bad at all. Now, there's one thing a lot of people have been complaining about, which is lack of S Pen support. To make this incredibly thin, that's probably why, but that felt like a missed opportunity. I mean, I love being able to use the S Pen on my S25 Ultra when I'm editing photos in Lightroom. Being able to draw masks and even jotting down quick notes came in extremely handy. And for a screen this size, that would have made a huge difference, especially for people who love sketching, storyboarding, or signing docs on the go. This would have been a nice feature, but I honestly don't mind it all that much. Like straight up, if you were to ask me, would I rather have a thinner foldable or a thicker foldable but with S Pen support, I would honestly choose the thinner foldable any day. Also, you still only get 25 watts of wired charging. It works, but coming from 45 watts on the S25 Ultra or even faster speeds on other flagships, it does feel a little slow at times. Alright, but all things considered, even with those trade-offs, no S Pen, slower charging, mid-tier secondary cameras, I still think the Fold 7 is Samsung's best foldable yet. This feels like the first foldable that will actually get people wondering what it's like to use one, and maybe even consider ditching their iPhone for one. It's finally pocketable, it's actually usable closed, and the main screen feels like a legit 2-in-1 phone and tablet in one device. So would I switch to it full time? 100%. And if you want to see what that's like, let me know in the comments and I can dive way deeper. So if you're someone who wants to try something different, step outside the iPhone, this is the first foldable that actually feels worth it. But it's not cheap though, it's $2,000. But if you got a good trade-in or you're deep in the Samsung ecosystem already, this might be the most fun you'll have with a phone this year, trust me. But let me know, would you upgrade to the Fold 7 this year or something kind of holding you back? Let me know in the comments. Now, if you found this helpful or just want to see more tech content from a creator's perspective, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you'd actually make the switch to a foldable. But other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.